talk to us about how the UK government's feeling about this moment, because we're still not quite there, are we, that all signed off?
We're not fully there, but we're very hopeful. And I think the world wakes up this morning with more hope about this situation than has been the case for the past 2 years, since October the 7th, a couple of years ago. This is a really big moment for the world. In the short term, what everybody wants to see is all the hostages, alive or dead, released from Gaza, more humanitarian aid going in to help the people of Gaza. And that's a huge prize in itself. But the bigger prize, the really big prize, is not just to stop what's been happening for the last 2 years and to release the hostages, but actually to have a more secure future there. So I think the biggest excitement about this comes with that possibility.
OK, let's take those in turn then. The hostage release. The Prime Minister of Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu, said this was going to be done by the Feast of the Tabernacle, which I think ends on the 13th of October. He has said, or it's been announced by sources through Reuters, that this is due to be done by Monday latest, Saturday at the earliest. Is there anything that the UK government can do to ensure that that continues as a time frame? Well,
I heard the President Trump talking about the same time frame overnight. He talked about Monday. The families of the hostages have been through so much pain, in many cases not knowing if their relatives were dead or alive. And I think that this is going to be such an important moment when those hostages are released. I wish it was today, I wish it was tomorrow, but if it's Monday, that would be tremendous news.
Because there is still stuff that can go wrong, I imagine, up to that point.
There is.
People can renege on their agreement.
Yes, and that's why the hope that we are feeling is always tempered by that. But I do think it's a big moment for the world. The first step has to be the release of the hostages. Then, of course, the people of Gaza themselves have been living in terrible circumstances. Many people have been killed. The whole place is going to need to be rebuilt. But the first thing will be that humanitarian aid should go in to stabilise the situation there, make sure people have got enough to eat, medical supplies, basic shelter, and then build from there.
On to that point then, your second point about the amount of aid going in. We know as part of Trump's 20-point plan that he says at a minimum, or the plan states, at a minimum, aid quantities will be consistent with what's included in the 19th of January 2025 agreement. That is not quite the aid quantities that were going in before the war. Will the UK government be doing anything to ramp up, increase the amount of aid going in? You've already laid out how much is needed.
Look, we want to see the aid going in. There are terrible humanitarian circumstances there on the food front, on the medical front, on the shelter front. I think if this ceasefire holds, the international community, including the UK very prominently, will rally round, will supply the aid, get that aid in, and do everything we can to do that. That's in all our interests, and we will play our part.
Can more money be given to UNRWA to do this? I know that funding has been re-established.
I'm sure it could, but I don't actually think money's been the obstacle here. I think it's been the security situation on the ground. And I think if we have peace, then there'll be a lot of money behind first an aid effort and then a rebuilding effort.
I just want to push you a little bit more on getting more aid in. Is there anything else that you would want to see the UK government specifically doing to get aid in? I know you'll work through the auspices of the agencies that are there, but I'm talking about, for us particularly, to be getting more aid in.
We'll play our part. As I say, I don't think the financing of aid has been the real obstacle. It's been the security situation. Once we get the security situation sorted, we can get the aid in. And that's going to be so important. We're coming to the winter months. People need shelter, they need food, they need medical supplies. Let's hope that this ceasefire holds so that all of those things can happen.
Let's move on to the next piece then that you mentioned. And it's incredible we can start now, I guess, thinking about that day after. right? It's already sort of laid out in some detail in the Trump 20-point plan. How do you foresee, how does the UK government foresee the next few weeks and months going, should it all hold in place?
Well, I think this is the most exciting possibility of all. If I go back to a couple of decades ago, there was great hope at the time through the Oslo Agreement that there would be a grand bargain, a grand peace between Israel and Palestine, which would, of course, be very positive for the Middle East as a whole. To be honest, in recent years, that hope hasn't been there. There's been no process to speak of. And you've had this cycle at its most intense in the last 2 years, but even before the last 2 years, this cycle of hostilities, rocket attacks from Gaza into Israel, retaliation from Israel, and it just seemed quite a hopeless situation. For me, the most exciting thing about the last couple of weeks is not just the possibility of a ceasefire, but the possibility that that hopelessness can be displaced by something bigger. So you referred a few moments ago to the 20-point plan released by President Trump a couple of weeks ago. That isn't just about a ceasefire. That's about a longer-term future, about rebuilding with the backing of the United States, the backing of the UK, the backing of Arab states in the region. That's a very exciting possibility for the world and, in the most immediate and direct sense, for the people in Gaza themselves.
What will the UK government do to ensure that that board of peace, Sir Tony Blair, former Prime Minister, may well be a part of that, says he will be, and that others may well join it, that it has enough representation of Palestinians? This is a concern within the region, as you know, that there aren't enough Palestinians involved in what will become the immediate day after if the fighting is to stop. Disparagingly, Blair's been called the governor of Gaza going forward. I mean, how will the UK government ensure that there is enough representation?
Look, he has immense experience. After he left office, he was heavily involved in the Middle East as part of the quartet that was working on these issues at the time, about 10, 15 years ago. So he's got immense experience in this. Israel will be clear that Hamas can't run Gaza in the future, but it shouldn't be a permanent Israeli-run area either. So it has to be in the long term run by Palestinians. In the meantime, something will be put together to stabilise, begin to get the rebuilding effort going, and in the longer term, run by the Palestinians themselves. That's the exciting prospect here. And it's a prospect, as I say, that hasn't existed in a real sense for a long, long time. And I think that's why there's so much hope this morning at this news. It's not just the short term, it's the long term too.
One more specific on this before I wanted to move on to some other topics, Pat McFadden, with your indulgence. A number of children, at least 10 children, have arrived here in the UK for medical treatment in recent weeks, along with 50 companions. How do you foresee the future of those children? Will they get to stay here?
Well, it may depend on the situation in Gaza, the long-term future, but we thought we should do our part in a humanitarian way to treat some of the most severely injured children in Gaza, where the medical facilities just couldn't treat them. It's a relatively small number, but it's important to those children and to their families. In terms of their long-term status, that will depend on the situation in Gaza itself, and of course their own intentions. In the immediate sense, we want to treat these children who've been traumatised by, and in some cases, very badly injured by war.
Can you foresee more Palestinians being able to come to the UK? Because, as you point out, Gaza is decimated. There is nowhere for them to live.
It is decimated, but there's more hope for it this morning than there has been for a long time. And I think most people in Gaza want to be able to live a life in Gaza. Now, amid all the rubble and dereliction that's there at the moment, that looks bleak, but it also looks hopeful, because we now have the prospect of a proper rebuilding process, and that's not a prospect that we've had not only for 2 years, but in terms of a proper peace for a long time before that.
A couple more questions, specifics, and they'll be quick if you don't mind. On other topics, the China spy scandal, the government have said they're disappointed that they weren't able to follow through on the prosecution. Isn't it true, though, as Ken MacDonald, the former DPP, says, that the standard was actually lowered? So there are still questions to answer as to why this prosecution was not followed through.
Prosecutions are a decision for the Director of Public Prosecution. And as the Prime Minister made clear in comments he made in his visit to India, these charges were brought at a time under the last government, and the evidence has to be provided under the rules at the time.
When the Secretary asked the government for more evidence, can you have provided that?
We can provide any evidence that the DPP wants, but it will be evidence around what was happening at the time, not what's happening now. And ultimately, it's his decision as to whether or not a prosecution goes ahead.
And last final point, the Prime Minister is in India. There are calls from the family of Jackdar Singh Johal to have his case raised. I know you know it well because it's been you've talked about a lot. Will the Prime Minister do that, and will we see Mr. Singh Johal released soon?
Well, I'm familiar with this case. It's been raised with me by many constituents. The Prime Minister has spoken about this case at the time. For viewers who are not familiar with this, Mr. Johal has been held in prison without ever coming to trial for a number of years now.
2017.
It's a long, long time. So we've always said to the Indian authorities, either bring a trial or let the person go. It's, you know, the principles of justice shouldn't be that someone is held for many years at a time without trial. So I think his case is well known. It means a lot to a lot of people here in the UK.
And will you be raising it with the Prime Minister of India? That's the question.
Well, I don't know what will be raised in their discussions, but the Prime Minister, our Prime Minister, has raised this case before.
Thank you very much for your time today. Appreciate it. Thank you.